Hey, storm is coming. And speaking of storms, we got quite a storm starting up here in Ontario. Um, anyhow, I'm going to invite on a couple of guests. One guy in particular who's done quite a bit for his community, uh, largely with the homeless and the Homes Now, Not Later project with Doug Gustafson, who is out of Washington State. And he's a huge advocate for direct democracy, as myself. And we're going to talk about a few things. One being the unity factor, and of course, the speaking of unity, the Common Ground project, which was started by a gentleman by the name of Neil Jones, and it is gaining a lot of steam and gaining popularity by the day. So that's what we're going to talk about. And the other guest I'm trying to bring on is the gentleman by the name of G.S. Pinto, or Gary, as many of them call him. He's a vet and a great guy, and another huge advocate for direct democracy. So right now I can see Mr. Doug. Doug, I know you're watching. If you can add yourself onto the podcast, we can get this show on the road. And here we go. So we got Doug. I'm gonna wait till he comes up, and maybe we'll ask Doug if he wants to talk about a few things. And
Hey,
there's Doug. How
hi,
you
how's
doing,
it
Doug?
going? I'm doing good, Nick. How
Good,
you
good.
doing?
I'm doing pretty well. So Doug, I'm going to invite Gary on here also. So
Cool.
for most of you out there, me and Doug have been working together on the Direct Democracy for Americans, and also he's been helping me out with Direct Democracy for Canadians. We're trying to spread the word through different media venues. One being Facebook, and many others on Twitter, on I don't know about Steemit, but on MeWe and also on Minds. So if you're on one of these other media outlets, please, reach out to us, join the group, and if you're a huge advocate, or if you're not too sure about direct democracy and you want to know more, then there is Direct Democracy for Americans, and we've actually started individual pages for each state. Maybe Doug can explain which states they are, but I know there's a few.
Yes.
There's next.
Yeah,
Maybe
so
you want to
we
explain which states.
yeah. So basically we set up the main page. First, Nick set up his Democracy for Canadians page. So then we figured, hey, we should set one up for the United States also. So we set up a main page that's the whole US. And then we have groups attached to that page that are for each state. Now, the groups are for public discussion, like everyone just discusses what they care about and people debate it or whatever. And then we also have pages for each state, as well as the main U.S. page. So there's a few states already. We have Colorado, there's Arkansas, there's Idaho, there's Oregon, there's Washington. We're also looking for people in states that want to run those state pages because we haven't actually done every state yet because we don't know people from every single state. So if there's anybody out there that would like to help manage one of these pages and work with us and get this going, then we would be glad for the help. And yeah, so we're going one day at a time, and I'm glad with the progress we're seeing so far. The main thing about direct democracy, why I think it's a good idea, is because um, you we always hear that it's a mob mentality or that it's a dictatorship of the majority or something, but mob, and I know people don't mean this when they say mob, they mean like an unruly crowd with torches and stuff, but mob really means mafia, right? So a small little clique of people that control everything. And and while I acknowledge that every single person voting on major issues that we would make mistakes sometimes. If you averaged it out, though, every decision, it would overall be better than the decisions we have now. And also, if it doesn't work out, we can always change our mind later. As the and again, and the reason why you do it with a majority rather than just like that. This is why I don't like go with anarchy as much. Like I get where they're coming from, but I don't see a structure for how you would manage how millions of people can manage society with scattered efforts without any kind of like standardization or anything like that. And so direct democracy gives us the ability to do that, and allows us to have the people decide policies. And while there will be mistakes, they'll be able to change their mind later, and you'll overall get things moving in a good direction. Right now, you have the opposite problem. You have 95% of the people that support certain things, and it just never goes through, or it drags for decades because the people in charge of the system aren't the same type of people as your neighbor or your friend. They're in a completely different position with different interests, and the policies reflect that. So we
Okay.
appreciate your help. We want to kind of at first just create kind of like a template, like even though we're not an actual government system or a political party or anything like that, we're trying to set up the mechanisms in practice so that when it's ready as a model that we can test as working, then people will hop onto it, and it might actually get changed in the laws or things like that. So we're basically building it from the ground up. Switzerland currently has a form of direct democracy. It's just like if you had a fourth branch of government. So the United States has three branches of government. It would just be the fourth branch, which would be the people, and you could, veto presidential decisions or Supreme Court decisions if you had enough popular support. Um, or come up with new policies you just want everyone to vote on. Of course, you'd need enough for a petition. It would just be that petitions could have legal weight attached to them where you would get to vote on it if enough people felt it was important. So I think that's very
So
important for us having a system going forward that's going to represent the people, because you can literally represent yourself. You can be a direct representative. Like you don't need a Congress because it's just you could have a Congress, but it wouldn't be as necessary because people could directly represent themselves. So, and with the internet, it makes it more possible. It was harder in the past because it would take weeks by horseback to get to Washington D.C. and you can't instantly communicate in real time. Everything was letters and shit. So basically now that we have the internet, we can communicate in real time, and people can directly represent themselves. The only reason why we're not is because this system was invented in the late 1700s, 1776, 1790, and so we're still using that system today, even though the realities of what we can do have changed. So I wonder what's going to happen, whether we're going to keep this system or whether we're going to change to a new system. But if we do change to a new system, that's kind of what I'm pushing for. So that's my view on it, and didn't hopefully not rambling too long or whatever.
no, no, it's okay, Doug. Now going back to the anarchy, a lot of people think that direct democracy is some form of anarchy, but really it's not. It's just a society of citizens organizing in unison, and there's no hierarchy.
Right,
So it's really a system of bottom up, where now you have a system of top down.
right.
You basically have a plutocracy, and I don't want people telling me that we're a constitutional republic. Yeah, maybe
Because
you
we're
are on
not.
paper, but in actuality, you're actually a plutocracy, and you're really controlled by a minority. Now,
Right.
a lot of people say that direct democracy is tyranny of the majority. And I'm thinking to myself, well, it's first of all, it's not a tyranny. And second of all, you have a tyranny of a minority running
Right.
not only the states, but all over the world. So what do you think about that, Doug?
Well, I think that I don't I really don't like when people talk about the majority like it's one thing, because you might be in the majority on one particular issue, and then you might be in the minority in another particular issue. And if you're in the minority in any particular issue, all you need to do to change policy is convince people that it's a good policy to change, and they can vote on it. And so your role is what you're doing right now, where you're posting videos online, you're writing articles, you're trying to convince people of what makes sense, and then when the majority eventually does catch on. You might be ahead of your time, and the majority doesn't catch on for 5 years, but eventually they do. And once it gets implemented and it works, then people are like, okay, why didn't we do this sooner? But you might be in the majority on one issue. Like, let's say, some people don't want universal health care. Some people do. You might be on the majority on that issue. If But then you might be on the minority in another issue, related to the environment or something else. So I don't know. I think that right now what we have is a small ruling elite of people, and the idea that the United States is a constitutional republic is what I would just call a PR marketing campaign. I mean, like you have a plutocracy, you have an oligarchy effect in practice, but how do you make people feel like they're still free, and how do you make them passive so that they don't challenge you? And that the best way is what they've been doing, where they tell you you're the freest country in the world. They tell you that we have freedoms that other countries don't have. They tell you that we're a democracy a lot, when it's never been a democracy, even on paper. It's just been a democratic republic on paper, but it's basically an oligarchy that pretends to be a democratic republic. And the Constitution is very good words, but words don't necessarily translate into policies and actions that happen. We've seen that the Constitution can be violated. Not only can you improve on the Constitution and make it a different Constitution that's better, not only that, but the current laws that are, or the things that are already in it haven't been enforced. Like, they just blatantly, people shouldn't be subject to unwarranted search and seizure of their property, but under the Constitution. But we all know that happens. People should have freedom of speech under the Constitution, but we all know people's freedom of speech can get violated if they say something that you don't like censorship. And of course, these are private companies. They can censor all they want because it's their own private policy. But again, these laws this Constitution can't actually be enforced. The way that I think we have to enforce it is people have to stand up for people directly. And when you have to stand up for other people directly, that's when you feel responsibility for the policies. And that's why so many people are politically disengaged right now. They don't feel like their input would change the policies at all, that they don't have a say. So that's why they don't actually get involved in their community, because they just will get stopped if they try. So, I think that it transitions us to a system that's fairer than the system we have now. But again, we're still pretty primitive. Humans have only had industry for a couple hundred years. We have a lot further to go, and there's going to be probably another system that works better than direct democracy. But from the tools we have right now, this makes the most sense in my view, especially given the internet, that we can pull this off, and it would make better decisions on the average than what's been being done right now by, quote unquote representatives. So.
And so, for those of you that are watching, if you guys have any questions you guys want to ask us, you can post them, and then I'll just read them off, and either myself or Doug will try to answer them to the best of our abilities.
And also, I'm the main admin of separation of corporation and state as well. So anything on that page too, anyone can feel free to contact me at any time. So sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
That's okay. No, it's okay. So that's Doug's other page is separation of corporation and state. We're actually linked with Storm is Coming. Direct Democracy for Canadians is linked with Storm is Coming, so the three of us are linked. I'm not sure if Direct Democracy for Americans is linked, but we could maybe in the future.
Or it should be, yeah.
Okay, so then there's four groups, there's 4 pages that are actually linked all together. So, but going back to the constitutional republic, if there's a country that is primed and ready for direct democracy, it would probably be the States, because here in Canada we have a constitutional monarchy. So really, right. And some people actually even have the debate that we're actually not even a country. based
Right.
on the 1931 Statute of Westminster, which basically the Queen, the monarchy, told our government that, listen, you are free to do what you want. You are no longer a colony or a dominion of England. So basically, you're an independent country. So, anyways, here's the first question from William Horenberg, and
Mm.
William is saying, how would you get money for information to get out there?
Well,
I'm not really sure.
you basically don't need any money to get information out there at this time because you used to have to have a supply chain of newspapers and ink and being able to do all that and get your story out. So obviously money was needed to get information out there. It was even still needed in the days of TV, because you had to get a broadcaster to sign, and there was a lot of people that would get left out. But with the internet, you can get your voice out there directly and in real time. And people still haven't caught up to it yet. I don't think. I think it's because the internet's relatively new. It's came up on us pretty fast. So people still are in the old way of thinking a lot, and it's slow. It's changing though. But basically, the people don't know that they are trained that they don't have an individual voice that matters, or that one person can't make a difference. If all you did was change someone's mindset through direct speaking to people online or in real life, they take that mindset into everything else, like their friends, their family. They go, oh, somebody told me an interesting story. I kind of agree with that. And of course, it can be used for bad too. It's used for propaganda purposes and stuff like that. But it's basically like we can directly speak and have our voices heard with the internet as long as it doesn't get censored. I think that's why it is getting censored now, because people are getting that message and they're directly speaking, and it's a message that fucks up the narrative that the owners have put out there, and so they try to literally stop the message by censoring people. But as long as there's an open internet, there's other websites to go to. As long as there's a mechanism for us to do that, I'm not worried about that. But if the mechanism goes away, then I would worry. So, but I don't see that happening. I think it's Pandora's box is already open. I just think it's a matter of time before there's a big shift in how people operate our system. Because
Yeah, the only money that you're going to be paying is for your ISP,
right,
and
which
if
they're going to try to milk you there too. They always do.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and if Congress has their way, they're going to try to bring back net neutrality, which would be an absolute abomination for free information and free speech. They would
Well,
just
yeah,
slow
yeah,
down.
because the interesting thing about the net neutrality debate is I really do agree with the idea of treating everything neutral in terms of traffic and just letting all traffic flow freely. But then when you look at when they say net neutrality, they say we want net neutrality, and but by the way, it's regulated under Title II. That's what net neutrality is. And then you look at what Title II is, and it's a really long document, like really like it's got hundreds of pages, and it literally talks about exactly what prices they can set, talks about where they're allowed to set up lines, stuff like that, like that was meant for when the phone companies were just starting out and it was a monopoly. So, and again, it didn't work because all of the phone companies reconsolidated back into AT&T again. So it really, you need a lot of you need to make and have net neutrality. You need to make it easier for there to be multiple internet service providers in every location, so that there's competition, and so that one can't fuck you over and you can't do anything about it. We also need municipal broadband, like where the city itself gives everybody cheap fiber, and what that does too is that brings business into your city too, because you'll have people setting up data centers in your city, stuff like that. But at the same time, and then also set up laws so that ISPs have to legally be able to contract out to each other. So or they would have to. So if CenturyLink and Comcast and whoever wanted to provide internet service to you, they should be able to lease the lines from another internet service provider so that you always have more choice. So that would be some of my thoughts on how you can keep net neutrality going, but in a much more simple way. But I don't know. This is just from my perspective as an IT professional network administrator. So I
Okay,
don't know.
so now, Doug, I want to ask you something. You know, a lot of people are talking about real progressives and Bernie Sanders. Can we ever trust any particular party to truly represent us? Do you think
No,
that?
no, I don't. And by the way, I'm just going to let you know too that I'm on the CC of the local Green Party in my area. But it's not because I agree with everything in the Green Party or that I'm loyal to them. It's that out of all of the four choices I have, they're the ones I can work with the most. I can't really work with the Democrats very much because I feel like I just get stabbed in the back. Like, I used to vote Democrat, and then the 2016 election was really eye-opening. I already felt stabbed in the back from Obama because they say they're gonna because he bailed out the banks. He didn't bail out homeowners who were in trouble. Didn't bail out students. Didn't bail out homeless. Didn't bail out anybody that really needs the help, but gives a blank check to banks and said he wouldn't either. He said he would take them on, and then he hires all Goldman Sachs people, to run his economic policy. So that's what the Democrats have consistently done for a long time now. I really liked the FDR's Second Bill of Rights. I thought that was a great mindset for a party. Although that's not what happened. They changed. They went more neoliberal. They went more warmonger. And so now so long story short, no, I don't think we can trust any of the parties. And I think if the Greens got big, they would get corrupted too. It's already happened in Europe and the UK. The Greens have corruption there. So the only reason why they don't as much in the US is because it's a small political party. But in any case, though, no, I think it's important for people to be independent, and I think it's important for people to work with all sides of the political spectrum, because that's the point of a lot of these because both parties are corporately controlled political parties. So they trick different people depending on what their bias is. And so words like progressive, words like conservative, words like libertarian, if you look at the dictionary definitions of those words and compare them to a lot of people that use those labels on themselves, you can find that it doesn't line up at all most of the time. And so these words have become like brands. More so than meanings of words, they've become brands. So if you're socialist, that's a certain brand. If you're liberal, that's a certain brand. If you're conservative, that's a brand, and you have to support everything within that. But when you talk about people, or when you talk to people in real life, and it's a lot more gray area though. Like, so for example, when we're working on the homelessness thing, we're a motley crew of people from all sides of the political spectrum. One of the most notable, we're called Homes Now Not Later, and so one of the funniest ones is we have somebody that's totally against open carry, that goes protests all their events, and then we have the president of the open carry club in our group working together on homelessness, and then there's no problem. So the way I see it is, if you're focusing on one goal at a time, say homelessness, say healthcare, say any one particular issue, not the hot button political issues that are meant to divide us all the time, like abortion and crap like that, but like the big stuff, you can get a lot of agreement. So for example, like, there's people on the, I'm more on the left, I'm more center left, I'm more on that side of the spectrum, but I've worked with people that are more right wing, and a lot of times they'll get behind any progressive policies as long as you don't, as long as it doesn't require taxpayer dollars, really. So they just don't want their money getting taken. And hey, if you don't take their money from taxes, then even though a lot of times that's a good way to pay for things, then you'll get their support. But but I think the reason why people have a problem with taxes at the moment is because they don't get a good deal for their taxes. So a lot of times people are paying more in than they get out. And then in the United States, especially, we're taxed for things, but it's not called a tax. So for example, with healthcare is a really good example. So, in most countries, people pay taxes, and then depending on their income, and then they just get medical care for cheap or free. In the United States, at the point of purchase, so to speak. So if you end up in the hospital, it's free. Some people might be getting 10 times the amount of care than what they paid for. But some people paid in and they didn't need the care. So it averages out to you have the care if you need it. But in the United States, you have to buy private health insurance, and then that private health insurance nickels and dimes you to the point where anytime you end up in the hospital, or at a clinic, even if your policy says this particular thing is covered, they come up with reasons why they don't cover it. And then, so not only do you pay $500 a month to $1,000 a month to $1,500 a month, so older people like in their 50s can pay upwards of $1,500 a month for their health insurance. And I pay $500 a month because I'm a small business owner. I don't get any kind of hookup from my company or whatever. So I have to pay $500 a month. And my insurance, every time I go to get medical care, they say it's not covered, and I have to argue with them or trick them into covering it. And then even if they do cover it, I still get a bill anyway. So it's like useless. And so if you were to count that as a tax, let's say you count your $1,500 a month as a 55-year-old as a tax, and you times that by 12, the number of months. I mean that's way higher taxes than people pay for a system that has a more universal healthcare. So if you counted that as a tax, that it's way more expensive. And the evidence shows that. If you look at the graphs, it shows that we spend 3 times more than the OECD average of countries that are part of that standard. And Canada has problems with its healthcare system too, but you guys are still 5 or 6 places ahead of us in terms of quality of care. And I'm actually surprised you guys. I think the problem with Canada is it's such a big country for so few people. I mean, so even though most of you guys live like on the border, it's still a very big country. There's still people that live in other parts of Canada. I'm sure that in the cities it's better, and in the rural areas it's worse. But that's my guess. I don't know if that's how it is, but in the United States, we should totally be able to cover this because there's 320 million people. It's easier to generate the revenue. It's easier to provide a quality facility to anyone really because the country's has more population. So I don't know. That's just one area, but again, yeah, these things are just brands. So it's just like Hillary Clinton saying she's a progressive that likes to get things done. Like we all know that's not true, But
the end game is all political parties just think for themselves. And even if you do have a good politician who really wants to represent his people, usually he'll get blacklisted and blackballed and black sheeped.
Yeah.
Eventually, they'll force him. So really, I mean, a lot of these politicians have good intentions when they go in, but then they're kind of, figuratively held at gunpoint and told,
Right.
Listen, this is the way it is here. And if you don't play by the rules, then you're out. Now, I'll give you an example of that here in Canada. We had New Democrats that are kind of like a Bernie Sanders type party. They're called the New Democrat.
Yeah,
And,
NDP.
a couple of NDP. So a couple of these reps that were actually representing Ontario, I believe, something was going on in their local area. Some corruption was going on. And these MPs actually stepped to the plate and said, no, this can't happen. Well, guess what? They got fired. Because again, they were not towing the party line.
How do they get fired? How do they get fired? Because the party can fire them?
They can. The party can fire them.
Wow.
Because they have now each
That's not the
party's
case
got
here. Yeah. So I didn't actually know that about that they could do that. Oh yeah, because you guys have a parliament, right, based on parties.
Right. All right.
So
and we have party leaders that actually we don't elect. And I forgot, I can't remember the name of them, but essentially they're kind of above the actual party leader of the party. They're called something else. I can't remember the name, but anyways, they set the rules and they tell you how it's going to be, and it doesn't really
And you
matter
can
what
be in
people say.
office. You can
People
be
have no
somebody
say.
that's a politician in office, and the actual party outside of that, a governing body, can literally remove you. Is what you're saying?
No, the actual party leader. Sorry, party whips. They're called
Oh
party
yeah.
whips, and
Okay.
they're not actual leaders of the party. They're not the actual like the face of the party. They're actually in behind the scenes, and they're called
Okay.
party whips. And they're very common in constitutional monarchy type countries like Australia, England, Ireland, and essentially they call the shots, right? So if they're not towing, if the politicians, even though they got voted in by the constituents, if they don't toe the party line, then essentially they can be let go. I mean, it's quite simple, and
Yeah.
that's what we're up against. So again, like direct democracy, like Doug was like, see, this is what direct democracy is all about. Two guys, three guys, four women, a bunch of people on Facebook or on another social medium talking about issues, and then word gets around, and then maybe one guy has a better idea, and everybody gets attracted to that idea, and then there could be an initiative where people collect signatures, and maybe they want to. It could be a law. It could be basically anything that has a major impact on all the citizens of that country, of that state, and of course that city or town, and they can eventually put that to a referendum. I
Right.
mean, politicians politicians have the power to do that, but the only problem is that you have to give up your power every 4 years or so to
Right.
a political party. And keep in mind, they hold no obligation to its voters or to its constituents because they don't have to. Because it's listen, representative democracy is quite simple. You give up your power to a party. Once that party gets voted in, then you have absolutely no more say because you've already succeeded your power. So you don't have a say. You could put pressure on them, but usually 9 times out of 10, they're not going to listen to you anyways because, again, you've given away your party. Direct
Your
democracy
power. Yeah.
is you have the power. You got the
Right.
power to change. And I mean, and no politician can say anything to you because they're basically powerless under a direct democratic system. And
Right.
people need to understand that. And again, a lot of people, Doug, a lot of Americans say, well, I don't want my constitution destroyed. Well, first of all, no one, if a direct democratic system were to get implemented, your constitution doesn't automatically get torn to shreds.
Right.
What happens is either you take away amendments or you add amendments. I mean, it's quite simple. You already got a constitution in place where here in Canada we don't, and
Right.
you can improve on them. It's quite simple. But again, it's people that are going to decide what they want in it and what they don't want in it. It's not
Right.
political parties that are doing it for selfish, corruptible reasons.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think that the we just but I just think that overall we've almost never in history have had power to the people really. It's transitioned more to that I think over time, but it's been a slow process. But yeah, it would be as simple as adding one more amendment to the Constitution that says that you'd have a national referendum system and citizens could veto political decisions or something like that. And now or a referendum system which would allow them to do vetoes or would allow them to propose new ideas. And so effectively when Congress would still be there and effectively for them to write a bill, they would have to keep in mind that the citizens could overturn that bill if they don't like it. And then that would mean that their bills would be better, but at the same time, it would mean that we could overturn them if they weren't, and that would give power to the people without putting them in charge of micromanaging the day-to-day operations. So that's how I see it. So
Yeah. And so another thing I wanted to talk about is that we just recently joined our groups, Direct Democracy for Canadians, Direct Democracy for Americans. We joined another project that was started back in 2011, and it's called the Common Ground Project, which was started by Neil Jones. And essentially, what this project is doing is trying to unify all the different factions, like the Occupy movement, the Bitcoin movement, the Anonymous, the Venus Project, the Zeitgeist movement, and we're trying to get all the folks together under one umbrella to basically change the system that we have in place because we know it's not working for the majority.
Right.
So that's something that we just recently joined, and we're trying to spread the message and the word out to people because, Doug, at the end of the day, we need numbers. The
Yeah.
more people we have involved, then the faster it's going to happen. But if we sit here and have these silly debates about, well, this system is better, well, no, listen, your system to you is better, but you still have to ask the people how they feel, and
What
the
they want. Yeah.
discussions have to be made. And this common ground project, that's what it's all about. It's about people coming together from different places, essentially, different opinions, and we're coming together to chat, to talk, and to hopefully work something out so that we have something in place. I mean, it might not be direct democracy, but as far as I'm concerned, direct democracy is really not an ideology. It's just a
No.
system that
No,
we
there's
use
no because
to actually.
if you had a direct democracy system, you would have situations where you personally would be like, man, I can't believe they're voting this way. They're so fucking stupid. But overall, it would be better than what we have now because a lot of times decisions would get made and they'd be fine. And overall, if you took 10,000 decisions and averaged it out, it would be a better result than what we have now with 10,000 decisions averaged out. So that's how I see it. It's not an ideology. It's like, but you have to get everyone's input. So everyone's input matters, whether you're a socialist or a capitalist or a anarchist or a libertarian or a liberal or whoever the fuck. Everybody should have an equal voice, and then we make the decision as a group. But everyone
So,
has their individual voice to talk about it and work it through, and then at the end we just make a call on it, and that's how you move it forward. If you're just going to argue my ideology, your ideology, mine's better, yours is better, it's never going to work. It's going to just fall apart. Uh,
yeah,
so it makes sense from a logical perspective of how do you move things forward and it's not a radically fast rate. It would be gradual enough, but also since it's the majority, you don't have instability because you don't have 1% deciding for 99%, and then the 99% doesn't like that and is like, what the fuck? What the hell are they doing? It's like, oh yeah, most people I know support that, so it would end up being fine. I don't know.
but
Um,
keep in mind that direct democracy is remember, let's say if you want a resource-based economy and you feel
right,
strongly about it, I support it.
right,
Many other people do. Direct democracy could be that vehicle that takes you there because let's face it, the 1% are, well, first of all, they're not going to want direct democracy. And second of
right,
all, they're definitely not going to resource-based economy because then that
right.
would be the end of capitalism, which I would totally agree with. But again, you have to essentially you have to involve all of your citizens in the major decision making. And if you
Yeah,
don't, then you're excluding people. And then when you exclude people, essentially what happens is you create division. And you don't want division. You want unity. You want people working together, and that's what this common ground project is all about. So we have it posted in our groups. If you get a chance, Direct Democracy for Americans, separation of corporation and state. I believe I posted it. Storm is coming, and Direct Democracy for Canadians. Join. Again, it's about everybody getting together, even though we don't agree on all things. It doesn't matter. I don't want. Listen, we don't want echo chambers. We want people to have different opinions because they might have something that's better that we might not agree on at first, but eventually, as they're describing it to us, we might say, you know what, that is a pretty damn good idea. So again, we need different voices, we need different ideas, and that's what this project's all about. So, Doug, I'm gonna let you end, and just if you have some finishing comments or statements you want to say before we end this.
no, I'm good to go. I just think that it's a day by day process, and we will keep moving forward. And I'm actually glad that we've gotten as many people as we have that are directly or trying to organize this and make it happen. Normally, I see things just fizzle out with two or three people trying to do it. And so now it's good to A, work on my local area with the homeless issue, but then B, to see that my separation of corporation state page has gotten more integrated into a team of people who have different pages and different points of view to tackle one part of the problem each, to the point where we have the best ideas from everyone at the end, right? So that's what I'm looking forward to. We still have a long way to go, but it's looking good. So that's my
Okay,
closing
Doug,
thoughts.
we're gonna end this video, and we'll definitely talk
Sounds
very
good.
soon. So,
Great.
anyways, guys, hope you enjoy this video. Take care. See you, Doug.
See ya.